Last Thanksgiving, my client Sarah, who lives in Lake Oswego, got a phone call at 3 a.m. Her 78-year-old mother, who'd lived in the same Portland home for 40 years, had fallen in the bathroom and couldn't get up. The paramedics found her there 6 hours later. But here's what Sarah told me a week after when we met at her mom's house. Jennifer, I was just there for Thanksgiving dinner. We laughed, we ate pie, everything seemed fine. How did I miss this? The truth, she didn't miss it. The signs were there. She just didn't know what to look for. I'm Jennifer Tim, Real Estate Wealth Advisor, and I'm licensed in both California and Oregon. As real estate wealth advisors, we help families grow, protect, and transfer generational wealth through real estate. And I have learned that your legacy begins with a real estate plan. But that plan only works when it includes an aging plan too. Over the last 10 plus years, I've worked with lots of families in coastal Southern California and the Portland metro area, and I've seen this story play out again and again. Today I'm going to show you exactly what to notice when you go home for the holidays, not to scare you, but to empower you, because the families who catch these early warning signs, they prevent crises. They preserve dignity, and they protect the legacy their parents worked a lifetime to build. Here's what I've learned working with families from Dana Point to Portland, from Laguna Beach to Beaverton. The holidays are the great revealer. See, phone calls hide a lot. Video chats hide even more. But when you walk through that front door, whether it's a beach cottage in San Clemente or a family home in Raleigh Hills, and spend 48 hours under the same roof, you see the truth. You see mom hesitate before she stands up from the couch. You notice dad holding onto the counter a little longer than usual when he walks to the fridge. You realize the mail has been piling up for weeks. These aren't catastrophes. They're whispers, and if you learn to listen to them, we can help our parents stay safe, independent, and dignified on their terms. Because here's what I know. Having an aging plan and a real estate plan aren't separate things. They're integral to preparedness. They're how we protect everything our parents built and ensure that their choices shape their future. Let me tell you about Tom. Tom lives in Newport Beach, but his dad, Frank, still lived in the Hillsborough home where Tom grew up. Frank was a Marine, disciplined, proud, independent. And that home, it represented 40 years of equity, memories, and security. It was part of Frank's legacy. When Tom flew up to Portland for Christmas, Frank's house looked different. The dining room table was covered in newspapers and unopened mail. Laundry was stacked up in the hallway. The kitchen trash was overflowing. And Tom thought, well, Dad's just been busy. But here's what Tom didn't realize. Frank wasn't busy. Frank was overwhelmed. The house was telling a story, and it was saying, I can't keep up anymore. I see this in every market I serve, from San Juan Capistrano to Tualatin. The house speaks first. We just have to learn the language, because how we respond to what the house is telling us, that shapes everything that comes next. So let's talk about what the house is trying to tell you. When someone who's always been tidy suddenly has clutter everywhere, that's not laziness. That's often early cognitive decline or physical exhaustion. Look for piles on every surface, laundry in hallways or on stairs, cords stretched across walkways. These are fall hazards. If you see this, don't criticize, just notice. It's data. Open the fridge. I know it feels invasive, but do it. Tom opened Frank's fridge in that Hillsborough kitchen and found expired milk from 2 months ago. moldy leftovers, and basically nothing else. Dad told him that Frank wasn't cooking anymore. He was probably eating cereal and crackers, if he was eating at all. And then Tom looked at the sink. Dishes piled up, a pan on the stove that looked like something had burned in it a few days ago. He walked past the laundry room. The baskets were overflowing. Frank was wearing the same flannel shirt he'd had on 2 days earlier. Here's what Tom didn't understand at first. Cooking and laundry aren't just chores. They require physical ability, standing for extended periods, bending down, lifting, balance, memory to follow steps. When those tasks start piling up, the body is saying, this is getting too hard. I had a client in San Clemente whose dad had stopped cooking entirely. Takeout containers filled the trash. The stove hadn't been used in months. He'd gone from making Sunday dinners for the whole family to living on frozen meals and crackers. That's not preference. That's decline. Stacks of unopened mail? That's not procrastination. That's often the first visible sign of cognitive overwhelm. Bills, junk mail, important documents, it all becomes just too much to process. So it just piles up. I had a client in Laguna Beach whose mother had 6 months of unopened mail on her kitchen counter. 6 months. And hidden in that pile, property tax notices, insurance renewals, mortgage documents, the kind of paperwork that protects what you've built, but only if you can manage it. This one is huge. Watch how your parents move through the house. Are they touching every wall, every counter, every chair back as they walk? That's called furniture walking, and it means their balance is compromised. They're one stumble away from a fall, and falls are the number one reason seniors leave their homes suddenly, whether that's a craftsman in Portland or a coastal property in Dana Point. And when someone leaves their home in crisis, there's no time to plan, no time to maximize equity, no time to protect what they've spent a lifetime building. Tom noticed his dad had stopped using the upstairs bathroom entirely. Why? Because Frank couldn't lift his leg high enough to step over the tub edge anymore. If there are no grab bars, no non-slip mats, and the lighting is dim, the bathroom is a ticking time bomb. Now let's talk about Sarah's mom, the one who fell on Thanksgiving in that beautiful Portland home. Sarah told me, Jennifer, I saw her shuffle when she walked. I saw her sit down hard in the chair. I watched her get winded walking to the mailbox. But I told myself she was just tired. She'd had a long day. She was fine. Her mom's body was screaming. Sarah just didn't know how to translate it. And I see this in both my markets, families in San Clemente or Beaverton. It doesn't matter. The body tells the same story if we're willing to watch. If someone who used to have a confident stride is now shuffling, taking tiny steps, or dragging their feet, that's a predictor of falls within the next 6 months. It means muscle weakness, balance issues, or neurological changes. Watch for slow, hesitant walking, holding walls or railings, taking breaks halfway down the hall. This isn't aging, this is decline. Try this. Watch your parents sit down and stand up from a dining chair with no arms. Do they push off the table? Do they rock forward twice before they can stand? Do they wince? That's muscle weakness, and it's fixable with physical therapy, but only if we catch it in time and early enough. Tom's dad, Frank, had lost 22 pounds since his last visit. 22 pounds. Tom didn't notice because it happened slowly. But when Tom looked at photos from a year ago, he saw it immediately. Unintentional weight loss is a red flag for malnutrition, depression, or illness. This is the one that scares adult children the most. You ask your mom to make her famous stuffing, and she forgets a step. She's done 40 years in a row. Or your dad tells you the same story 3 times in an hour. Or they seem confused in the evening. Sundowning, it's called, even though they were sharp this morning. These are early signs, not a diagnosis, not a crisis, just a signal that something is changing. And here's one that terrifies me as a safety expert. Unexplained bruises. Sarah noticed her mom had bruises on her arms and on her shins, bruises she didn't remember getting. "Oh, I must have bumped into something," she'd say with a wave of her hand. But here's the truth. Multiple bruises, especially ones they can't explain, that often means unreported falls they minimized, dismissed, or forgot about entirely. I had a client in Dana Point whose father had bruises up and down both arms. When they finally asked him directly, he admitted he'd fallen 3 times in the past month, but hadn't wanted to worry anyone. Those bruises weren't just bumps, they were his body's way of screaming for help. If you see a pattern of small injuries, bruises they don't remember, marks from bumping into furniture, that's a red flag waving at you. Here's the part we miss the most, because it's the quietest. Sarah's mom in Portland didn't say, "I'm scared to be alone at night, honey." She said, "Oh, I'm fine." Frank in Hillsborough didn't say, "Oh, this house is too much for me." Instead, he said, "I've got it under control." But their hearts were telling a different story, and the only way to hear it is to listen for what's not being said. This is what I do as a real estate wealth advisor. I help families with these conversations. I've sat at kitchen tables from Lake Oswego to Newport Beach, and I've learned that protecting generational wealth isn't just about the numbers. It's about honoring the people who built it. Does your parents seem smaller, quieter, less engaged? They used to light up the room. Now they're sitting on the couch while everyone else talks. That's not introversion. That's often anxiety, overwhelm, or depression. Listen for these. "I don't want to be a burden." "This house is getting to be too much." "I'm nervous when I'm alone." "I don't go out as much anymore." These aren't complaints, they're cries for help, wrapped in pride and independence. And when we hear them, that's when we start planning together. Tom's dad, Frank, had a secret. He'd stopped driving at night 3 months earlier, particularly on those rainy Portland evenings. He told no one. He just stopped. But Tom noticed the car had a few new dents in the bumper, and when they drove to dinner together, Frank hesitated at a green light for 10 seconds. I see this with my California clients too, parents who stop driving on the Pacific Coast Highway, who avoid the 5 freeway, who suddenly don't feel like driving to the store anymore. Driving loss is one of the hardest transitions for aging parents because it represents freedom, independence, identity. So watch for new scratches or dents, white knuckle gripping of that steering wheel, avoiding left turns, refusing to drive at night or in the rain. getting lost on familiar routes, even routes they've driven for decades. If you see this, it's time to have the conversation. Now, if your parents own investment property, listen closely, because this is where strategic planning becomes absolutely critical. Frank owned 3 rental homes in the Portland metro area. They were supposed to fund his retirement, but by the time Tom visited, the tenant calls and repair stress were stealing Frank's peace. The properties that should have been building his legacy were draining him. I see this with clients in Dana Point and San Clemente who've held rental properties for decades. Same story. And here's what most families don't realize. How your parents exit investment property determines how much wealth transfers to the next generation. If this sounds familiar, ask, Dad, is managing this still working for you? Have you thought about what you want long term? What do you want your legacy to look like? As real estate wealth advisors, we help families navigate elegant exits, 1031 exchanges, Delaware statutory trusts, succession plans that protect generational wealth before the crisis forces a fire sale. Whether you're in California or Oregon, these strategies exist. We just need to talk about them before the stress becomes unbearable. But here's the thing, and this is important. None of this matters if we're not centered on what your parents actually want. The best real estate strategy in the world means nothing if it doesn't honor their dignity, their choices, their story. That's why the conversation comes first. That's why we listen before we plan. That's why every strategy I help families create starts with this question. What do you want? Because this is their legacy, not ours. Okay, you've noticed the signs. Now what? Here's what Tom did in Hillsborough and what Sarah did in Portland. And it worked beautifully in both cases. They didn't say, you can't live here anymore. Tom said, hey Dad, I noticed you seemed a little tired walking around the house. How have you been feeling? And Frank didn't get defensive. He got honest. You know, son, I am tired. This house is a lot. I've been thinking about what's next. That's the conversation. Right there. Whether you're sitting at a table in Laguna Beach or Lake Oswego, the framework is the same. Step 1, start with empathy and respect. Mom, you matter to me. I just want to check in. Step 2, describe what you saw. No judgment. I noticed you were holding onto the counter when you walked. Step 3, ask, don't tell. How have you been feeling? Step 4, listen deeply without solving. Step 5, explore supportive options together, not urgently, not forcefully, just openly. What would make life easier for you? Have you thought about what you want the next few years to look like? What if we just explored some options? No pressure, no decisions today. What matters most to you? And if you need help navigating that conversation or creating a plan that honors both their wishes and their wealth, I'm here. This is what I do. After Tom and Frank had their conversation, here's what we did together. We installed grab bars and better lighting in the Hillsborough home so Frank could age in place safely. We hired a house cleaner to come twice a month. We started touring senior living communities in the Portland area, just exploring, no pressure. We created a comprehensive exit strategy for his 3 rental properties. We structured a 1031 exchange into a Delaware statutory trust, passive income, no tenant calls, maximum tax efficiency. We built a clear plan for how Frank's equity would transfer to Tom and his siblings. We made sure Frank stayed in control on his terms. And you know what Frank said to me? Jennifer, I feel like I'm in control again, and I know my kids are going to be okay. That's the goal. Not to take over, not to force, but to support, empower, and plan together. Whether your family is in San Juan Capistrano, Tualatin, Newport Beach, or Raleigh Hills, you don't need to face this alone. Here's what we can do together. We can create a comprehensive aging and real estate plan. We can request a home safety assessment. We can explore aging in place upgrades. We can tour senior living communities in coastal Southern California or the Portland metro area, pressure-free. We can review investment property strategies, 1031 exchanges, DSTs. We can build a family wealth transfer plan for that real estate. We can prevent future disputes with clear communication, ensure decisions are made with dignity, not in crisis. I'm licensed in both California and Oregon, and I've helped lots of families navigate this transition with clarity, compassion, and strategic wealth protection. If you've noticed changes this holiday season, whether you're visiting Dana Point, Beaverton, San Clemente, Dunthorpe, or anywhere in between, if something felt off, if your gut told you to pay attention, trust that. You're not overreacting. You're not catastrophizing. You're noticing. And that noticing, that is love in action. Download the free 10 Red Flags Holiday Home Safety Checklist below. Everything we talked about today in one easy guide. Or schedule a family clarity call with me to discuss your family's unique situation. Let's create a plan that honors your parents, protects their dignity, and preserves what they spent a lifetime building. I serve families throughout coastal Southern California and the Portland metro area, and I'm here to help you navigate this with clarity, compassion, and expertise, because having an aging plan and a real estate plan aren't just about preparedness. They're about peace of mind. They're about control. They're about ensuring that the wealth your parents built continues to serve your family for generations. Your legacy begins with a real estate plan. Let's build yours together. Because the best gift you can give this season isn't something you buy. It's showing up, paying attention, and being ready to help when the time comes.